Councilmember Bruce Henderson.
Here, ma'am.
Councilmember Walter Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Willie Deeds.
Here.
Councilmember Louis Decker.
Here.
Councilmember William King.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 2 is briefing, discussion, and direction concerning the streets projects.
No.
Go to City Administrator Chris Hurd.
All right. Whoa. So I put in your guys' packet, and essentially where we are in terms of what I'm ultimately looking for this evening is during Harvey, there were 51 street segments that were damaged that FEMA, and I'm sure there were more, that FEMA has inspected and determined that they were damaged. So this evening, I have worked with our team, and I'm going to let them introduce. I'll start with Travis. I'll let you, and then we'll just go around, and then you guys can. So Travis is working with IDS. Go ahead. I'll let you introduce. Go ahead.
Travis Sullivan, IDS Engineering Group.
And he's primarily going to focus on design of the roads.
Greg Wine with you as always, leading the ready.
Mike Saran, who's on drainage.
Patrick Rothschild, Public Management. We're overseeing the grant applications for CDG and expansion.
Thank you guys for being here.
So, and then obviously Zach and Brian and Stephanie have been a part of this discussion. So ultimately, we feel, staff feels that we've got about $4 million of available funds that we can expend over the next 12 months between cash on hand in our street maintenance program, cash on hand and expected revenues during this time. So the plan that we put forward essentially is the minimum, sort of the minimum service at this point in time based on what we can afford. So if we just go through it real quick, and this map that's laying out here, the pink is overlays. The reason they are overlays, that's 100% of city costs of tune of $671,000. That is what we are identifying for future federal funds related to the fact that it's got a high LMI. So when we look at where we can expend those future federal funds, that's the best place to expend it. So right now, we will engage a conversation with FEMA to determine sort of best path forward. But right now, we are articulating that we're going to overlay those. Then the street segments that are in blue, they are either currently concrete and going back in concrete, or they are asphalt going to concrete. And we will pay, so on concrete to concrete, it's PA 90/10. On asphalt to concrete, it's 90% reimbursed of asphalt cost. And we pay the delta difference. And then the orange is what we are saying that we are looking at a asphalt reconstruct, 90/10 participation, putting it back to pre-Harvey conditions. So if you look on the cover sheet that I sent forward, it's 13 miles of activity. It's about $13 million, and FEMA's share will be around the $8 million mark, and the city's participation will be about 4.1. One caveat, I know it says 4.6 on your worksheet. The one caveat is on Texas, south of 517. That was on the multi-year plan. It will have nothing to do with FEMA reimbursement or anything, but in terms of our long-term plan is to make Texas concrete from park to the incorporated limits. I went ahead and put that in the hopper in the design standpoint because it was on a multi-year plan, and at this point, when we look at our ability to leverage dollars, this would be the time to go in and reconstruct that. However, if cash isn't available, that's money, we will, if we can identify more funds, then I think some of these streets can be increased, or can be added through the PA program, and we'll have those conversations separate with, because this is just PA,
So,
public assistance.
if we don't drag our feet when we agree to this, give me a timeline.
So in terms of the overlay, that's easy. We put a contract out and we match on it. In terms of the asphalt, as long as FEMA continues to say they're eligible, we'll put a contract out, and then Travis, an IDS, will start design, and we'll just basically do a quantities contract. As the design gets done, we'll get done. I'm hoping, realistically, to have all of this done over a 24-month period. A start and a stop is going to depend on cash flow, right, and approval process. Because part of our challenge, because we aren't sitting on a bunch of cash, is I don't want to make this commitment and bring a contract forward for you guys to initiate this project without having some assurance from FEMA that they will all be eligible for reimbursement. Because they've deemed them damaged. Now I want to say, hey, here's our scope, here's how we're wanting to get this done. So I need some assurance. So that, and I can't answer the federal side. What I'm saying, what I will say to you is the overlay isn't involved federal. Asphalt to asphalt is straightforward, and generally we've been getting reasonable turnaround times on answers when it goes back to existing. So I think the only one that, in my mind, has some a longer arc is the hard beam. Even though we're paying the difference, the delta, and we're only getting reimbursed for asphalt, they will still need to approve that activity through their administrative process. Correct, Stephanie? If I said anything that you would like to correct or so.
Is it your intention? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I compared some of the numbers from what you gave us the last get together
Yes,
and the numbers that are on this list.
Correct.
Which was part of the packet.
correct. What's
And I think it was 4 or 5 of them, but this one was always a little bit higher.
correct?
So are these the numbers that
Right.
we go with?
So, and I don't want to dive into the minutia, but what I have done so that we can get some consistency is I went back to our 2016 street study, pulled those segments and those segment links, and I'm using those as the basis, because the one that we passed out to show you sort of, hey, here's some of the methodology, we used exact coordinates that FEMA had provided us. But that's another segment. So what I'm trying to do is say, hey, look, we already have segment identification. So let's go ahead and fit that back in there. So we will, on those discrepancies, we will essentially have a conversation with FEMA at what point. So I'm going to repair, my intent to repair full segment links based on our 2016 study, even though FEMA may say, we're not going to reimburse you for that extra 100 feet. So from a cost standpoint, I'm not going to just repair a segment that FEMA defined. I'm going to repair to the point where we define, because part of, I think, our success is tying back to our street segments under our study, so that as we do this study again and we see how well we're improving our streets, we have a baseline versus all these different links. So that's the discrepancy that you see.
Okay, the other question I had is, are we going to standardize on the width of these streets? Because
Yes.
there's a pretty big difference.
So, right, so it is, the direction I have given is, at a minimum, I would like to see driving lane. Okay, ideally, 11 is ideal, but when you get down to the standard width, I've asked for, at a minimum, for us to go back. So again, when you talk about the nuances of dollars, and you think of a linear foot, right? If it's $20 a square foot, well, it's the linear foot difference between an 18-foot street and a 20-foot street. So we're gonna pick up that cost, again, try to standardize our road so that we can have a process to where we know we have 20-foot concrete streets in the city of Dickinson. Mayor? Sorry. And so we'll have to pay, and there may be some cost, our cost, make that happen.
This was, we talked about before the meeting, but just to reiterate the meeting, under the construction type, the majority of them say concrete. The surface type is either asphalt or concrete. So when it says the type of construction, we're talking about the subbase there.
Right, so if it says asphalt or concrete in the construction type, we're talking about surface and subsurface, and it will be a full redesign and reconstruct of that driving
Will
area.
it top it with concrete or top it with asphalt? Curb base is gonna be completely redone.
Correct, okay? When it says overlay, that is our cost, and again, just to walk out some of the nuances, I'm gonna balance, and you guys should know this without me saying it, but I'm gonna say it publicly, I'm balancing time and money. We're way behind time and we don't got a lot of money. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way, whether on some of these overlays, do we pulverize them and do we overlay them? Do I do one contract and get it, and the cost comes in? Because these dollars, excuse me for 1 second, these dollars, right there, that's our little spreadsheet where I try to put budgetary dollars together, pencil and paper, to put this $13 million project together. So as bids come in, and as we sort of tighten everything down, that's gonna really, truly articulate our ability and how we're going to move, at what speed and at what cost. And your guys' next steps, obviously, is as contracts, if you guys say, we like your recommendation, we'd like you to proceed with your recommendation, knowing that you would like every possible street that we can get back in concrete, and I understand that, then we will tomorrow morning, we meet at 9 a.m., we will start putting bid specs together and a plan forward for you guys to start, so we can get things out on the street, so that we can get back for your approval, so that we can get things in FEMA's hand for their approval, so that we can get going.
The only statement that I'd like to make, as far as what we're gonna construct them out of is, to me, anything that's close to the bio, Mariners, Mooring, and those streets down there, I feel they need to be done in concrete, because if we're doing an asphalt, a high tide zone. So we need to put in a good street in these low-lying areas in the plans.
Yeah, so, let me give you an example. There. The only one that's not going back under this recommendation is Leninger, and the reason why we made that decision is if you actually, so that street currently is asphalt, and we are not going to, if you look at it, it's holding up fairly well, but there are some spots that need to be dug out and replaced. So I'm saying, we're going back to FEMA and say, look, we need about 50 grand to make repairs on that one. And so that's the only one in that area, to your point, that's the only one that we're recommending to stay it is, because we're not gonna be dealing with the entire mile of that street. We're only dealing with segments of it that were deemed damaged by FEMA.
So to state the obvious, as much for everybody else as us, all that's showing on this list right here is gonna be all done by contract, correct? Got you in a sandwich?
reconstructs, yes. The overlay, I'm gonna balance time and money. If I can get a contractor in at a lower, because remember, that's 100% our dollars. So if I can get him, and those are dollars that realistically, some of those streets will get improvements used in our CDBG funds.
Okay, but the point of that question slash statement
Okay.
was, we got 6 miles of overlay, that's a lot of work, okay, we've discussed it. Did I just step in? Go ahead.
Well, you actually asked for it on the chart.
Okay, it's 6 miles, it's a lot of work. We've already had the discussion multiple times about the size of our public works department and their capabilities. And if we're gonna be contracting that out, I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that we still do have a public works department that will continue to do maintenance and all the stuff that is not part of this project.
Right.
Continue to make progress.
So just to give you, in my mind, just don't ever get in there voluntarily, is in the next 6 months, in all reality, we're gonna be desilting 9 miles of ditches. We're gonna potentially be overlaying up to 6 miles of street. We're gonna reconstruct 3 miles of asphalt. We're gonna reconstruct 4 miles of concrete. In addition to that, Mike, with the dollars, has identified some of these roadside ditches where we can have culvert upgrades. So that's a very good project that we can go back to FEMA for mitigation and actually have our guys install. But there could be up to 20, 30, 40, 50, how many culverts do you think would be upsized in our city?
Well, definitely, upside down.
A little more than 50.
I didn't hear what he said.
50% of
50% of all of our coverage.
So that, it may be, so we may simply get FEMA, tie that into a project, order the culverts, and here we go. Okay, so I mean, and again, this is where, Raleigh, to your point, this is where those additional staff, once we actually start laying out, because on top of just that, so we may end up contracting that out if there's 100 and we because, so that's, everything that your staff is doing is constantly, and I just try to continue to underscore the normacy that we're getting ready to undertake. Every decision always comes back to time and money. So we are balancing that. We understand the pressure you guys are under, and we do want to act, and we are trying to act in the most judicious manner possible, and we're trying to learn from the lessons of the past. So as things pop up, I'm gonna make recommendations and to this council, and then you guys need to say yea or nay. So
Councilman Deeds.
Well, first off, I think this is a great plan and something that we need to move forward on. I too have concern about the asphalt overlay and whether, what I don't want to happen is I don't want to delay that because we don't have the manpower to jump on it. So I'm more inclined to contract it out, but that's a, like you said, that's a decision that will come back to us. The other thing on the asphalt overlay is I would like engineering, whether it be IDS or Hewitt-Zollard, to bless what we're doing on that to make sure that, because we've already seen some evidence that there's a few premature failures on what we've done so far. So we'll make sure that there's not, just a minor fix that we can do to ensure that that'll happen.
we've talked about that in there.
But other than that, I mean, I know, I've got maybe a little bit of heartburn on, a couple of the streets, but as far as the path forward, the only one I saw is like, Spruce south of 517 is essentially a driveway and we're gonna concrete. When the other side of Spruce is held up for 25 years as an asphalt
That is, Falco is one that is on our multi-year financial plan and ties in really well with the more addition conversations that we're having.
This,
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Can William go first?
yes, go ahead.
Not Kevin, William Addis first. Want to make sure that we're differentiating what is PA and what is future LMI. Based upon your presentation that I've seen here tonight, that's the PA request on reimbursables. Is that correct?
Say that second sentence again.
What I've seen in your presentation tonight, what you present to us is the PA reimbursement.
Yes.
Okay. And then the second thing is, can you be clear on you said the overlay was our cost. In your presentation, you have overlay 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain the difference?
I can. Okay, so the reason I'm saying, let's clarify why I'm saying the overlays are a cost. You cannot have duplication of funds. So if we was to reconstruct something with PA, we then can't tear it apart.
We're with you on that.
Okay, so what I'm trying to do is high speed, low drag related to those. So what I did is the two kind of areas that we have identified as CDBG funds is Moore's Edition and Nicholstone. And so all I did is sort of so that I can keep that cost both on the reconstruct, because we have all those numbers tied to concrete with drainage and all that reconstruct, so I basically have that as bucket 1, bucket 2. And so that's where overlay 1 and overlay 2 came in, is so that I could segregate those costs so that as I'm having conversations and we're writing grants and we're doing, I can just pull that out and know that this is the subset of the street segments that I'm talking about. And I say I, it's really all these guys. The overlay 3 is Camp Allen. And at this point, based on that road as a whole, and that's why you see a little bit of reimbursement on the overlay, is because that is one where that is its final driving surface, is that we're essentially going to sort of pulverize portions of that and overlay the whole street until at some point we can come back after all of this has been addressed. And the reason we really did that is it's not in a failure point to really merit a full asphalt reconstruct, and the asphalt reconstruct isn't consistent with the remaining neighborhood. So all of that's concrete coming off of that. And so, but then in terms of prioritization of our dollars, Camp Allen is not where we need to be investing concrete money because of its sheer size and length. So that's why we ultimately came. Now that is, I came back and said, overlay Camp Allen, and then let's look at that a few years down the road on what we really want to do with that. And I think some of that will be predicated on any of the land that develops around there and that. And that's the same answer with Spruce also.
Okay. And you open with indicating that you recommend, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about and you open with the fact that rather than an 11-foot street, it'll be a 10-foot street. Are you anticipating striping?
I think any federal standard that is applicable on streets should be applied. I don't believe that in neighborhoods that is a good use of cost, but I think there are some streets that do have throughputs that probably do, with lane delineation would make sense.
Yes, one of the things they talked about at TML this year, was about the striping and what a difference it makes. Not saying we have bad drivers in Dickinson, but if the street is clearly marked, you know, it helps with the sharing the road concept.
Sure.
So it would be beneficial, and that was one of the things we talked about.
And I think one of the things that's important to understand is as we go through some of the design and stuff, I intend to have multiple workshops and bring you guys in so that as we put some of these plans together, that we do have consideration and that we do maybe add amenities, some of the in particular streets that make sense to harmonize the community. So that's why this is the 30,000 foot view, and that's where I'd like us to stay to get direction so that we can start having conversations that we need to have.
Certainly great presentation, and appreciate, I know a lot of long hours and hard work went into it. You're talking about 13 miles, 13 million, in funding. Our contractors that we're working with, that we anticipate working with, are they equal opportunity employers?
I believe that's gonna be a requirement of all the federal grants.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, so they'll have to follow all the federal regulations, so WEBs, DBs, I don't know what any other acronym that I can think of, would obviously get preferred bidding.
I think the city's contract requires that
Yes.
there's no discrimination. It's under your contract.
It's important to access, we're dealing with this kind of money, the Dickinson is dealing with this kind of money.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
I was curious, how are we going to prioritize? Is that a different conversation? Are we going to start with 51 segments and work from there?
So that, with your guys' blessing tomorrow, your management team's gonna get together and sort of figure out how to start eating this elephant. And part of, I think, that conversation is we can then, the biggest conversation that FEMA's been waiting is cost, distance, and scope. And so you're providing that answer this evening by agreeing to this. And so I think that's gonna, so prioritization is gonna be based on your management team and then future discussions with FEMA to say, where do we start? So that's,
And of course, how much money's in the pot?
right. I mean, we still, there are still some conversations that, you know, they've been deemed damaged, but they have not been deemed eligible for reimbursement. So that's the next, that's the conversation they're waiting to have. And
I guess in regards to priority, what I heard earlier was we're targeting, I know this is a swag, for a 24-month completion, so in that amount of time, you know, priority is kind of a moot.
traffic control, and you know, again, and if you want, the frankest I can be in this conversation is the less impediments through the FEMA process is probably gonna dictate the most priority. It's gonna dictate the priority. So asphalt to asphalt, small segment, they say yay. You know, concrete, some of these larger Texas, you know, they'd be like, well, and study some more.
Councilman King?
So in this coordination, you'll be communicating with not only our law enforcement, but our school as well.
Oh, yeah, no, my guess is, and I have no historical knowledge, but this is probably one of the largest public works programs this community's ever undertaken. And it will be, it will test us in both traffic control, communication, and overall, because I don't want to ruin such a positive happening because of just failed execution. So everybody, this will take a lot of attention to multiple parties.
Councilman Wilson?
Okay, so as I understand this, this is the new program or new plan. The one we had 14 days ago or whatever it was, is not part of this, correct?
No, it is.
Okay, it's incorporated into this? Okay.
Yes.
So, I'm sitting here listening, and you were saying, acquisition of additional right-of-way or width of streets. And, so I'm hoping that if this has to be done, that we make sure that on all this stuff, especially with the concrete, or anything that's gonna be a rebuild, that we coordinate with the water district, as we always have done, so that they don't come back after we got it all nice and done and dig it up for us, so.
So last week, the city had a joint capital improvement conversation with my staff and Russell, and his staff was going to be there, but had a doctor's appointment at the last minute. But we are absolutely sitting side by side and looking at their projects and our projects, and where there is coordination, we are trying to maximize. And so, in fact, yesterday, the day before, I gave Patrick 4 or 5 projects that they are interested in through the normal CDBG project that actually tie in to some of our reconstruct on our streets. So that coordination is occurring, and I know that multiple players within the water district will be involved as the conversation moves forward.
Also, on one of the streets here, I think you mentioned Linear.
Yes.
Yeah, Linear, I believe, that's a street that had to be asphalted about, 3 or 4 years ago? When the contractor, pardon me? Yeah, the contractor made a mistake, tore it up, and it had to be blacktop, of course. And just so we understand why it's in that good shape. Because it was redone, I don't know.
Right.
Whatever they concreted, Country Club Drive.
But I'm of the opinion, and I hear what you're saying, I agree. I'm of the opinion that we want to be very specific to our ask to FEMA so that we can get approval in an expedited fashion. And so if there's opportunities where we can acknowledge that there's,
My point is that, from what I've understand with FEMA so far this time, is because of the condition that the streets were in prior to Harvey. That's been some of the problems with that street there. I know was not in that, there was nothing wrong with that street, but it had been redone.
yeah, no, in some cases that's the case, and some of them just based on the length, the delta, our cost of the delta consumes a organic amount of funds available that doesn't really allow us to cast the net as wide as we should. I know I just said a bunch of big words, but that's.
So, what are you looking for from this meeting? Are you looking for consensus? Do we need to make a motion?
No motion, we just need, and what it sounds like is we're all in agreement that we should move forward with the streets suggested.
As my staff asked me, I just want you to say, Chris, I like the color you used on the map.
Actually,
I know, he did say, he said one would say they didn't like the color of the shades of color.
Everybody good with moving
actually, I'm
forward?
glad that we've got, that we're moving forward on something.
Councilman Kenny?
I am in favor of it, but you identified 70% of the LMI a moment ago through legal. You identified the 70% a moment ago through the LMI intentions for the LMI for Nicholstone Morris Edition. Where are you anticipating using the 30%? Do you have identified any streets?
Hanson's on it.
Well, but that's DA.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Well, we have plenty to pick from. That's for sure.
You're working already.
I'm gonna answer it in the most direct way I can.
As soon as you finish that piece of candy, though.
You can write this one down. Yes.
That's it.
Councilman Weber, you have a comment?
Yes, I'll go back to what we talked about before. Just coming through here, you got Long Shadow, there's 8 entries here. Park Avenue, there's 8. 38th, there's 8. And I look at all this, Colorado's 9. And understand, but it sort of casts a different picture
Well, so,
when you look through all these.
right, so as I have sort of tore that spreadsheet apart, right? It looks to me, and obviously wasn't here in 2016, but it looked to me that the contractor that did the assessment broke it into, had basically two criteria. As close to 350-foot segments as they could get, or if they could get a damaged area within one segment, they adjusted. So you've got a couple of 100, a couple of 200, you got one that's 1,200, you have the Lynn Eddy that's in the entire street. So, so what they did, and that's one of the conversations that we'll have if we redo this, is we will come in with a little bit more definitive segments that make sense for repair versus an average of 350 foot.
Texas Avenue's not right.
Right.
Well, when we do like a Texas Avenue or Colorado or any of the others that have multiple segments, we're gonna do that from one end to the other. We're not gonna do it in 11 little pieces, right?
Yes and no. Yes.
You might do it in a little segment at a time, but you're gonna start at one end and go to the other end.
Well, so Texas Avenue is a great example, and I know I don't want to prolong the conversation, but Texas Avenue is, we've got, Texas Avenue south of 517, we'll call that segment A, right? Then we have Texas Avenue 37 to 517, which falls in D111, subdivision, or, subshed, right? Which makes sense, that we'll probably do that. That part of that is the PA conversation. Then north of 37th Street to our incorporated limits, which would fall under CDBG, and so we'll construct that segment using those funds.
But we'll
Potentially.
do the project, will
As a
this
whole.
be done from 517 to the corporate limits at one time? Or
To the
one
south,
sales?
to the south?
No, to the north.
No, it will not. It will probably be in two separate segments. It will probably be, 37 will be the dividing line, because that falls into two different funding mechanisms, and so and just so you all are aware, and I made this comment to the staff 2 weeks ago, everything will be phased. Everything. You will never see, as long as I'm sitting here, a project that will be a standalone project. It will be phase one, it may be 20 phases, but in terms of the way our federal funding is gonna come down, we're gonna design in totality, construct incrementally, and so therefore, that Texas Avenue may be phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, to chunk out to phase 135, so that we can align funding. But that's why you pay a bunch of experts to keep all that straight.
Well, they go with some different too.
That, right, so my intent is to move everything to a 10-foot, driving width, so that would be a 20-foot street.
Any other
No.
questions or comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Dean, second by Councilman Wilson.